All right, now we're into conditionals, which you have dealt with before in previous math classes and in science. It's an if-then statement, hypothesis conclusion, okay? A compound statement using the connectives if-then, or any compound statement that can be changed to this form, okay? So if you remember in Algebra 2, there were times where we had a statement that, in geometry, where we didn't exactly have if-then, but you could add the words. And, if-then was implied. So, example, if the night sky is cloudy, then you can't see the stars. Okay. If you exercise daily, then your health will improve. Okay. Now, the symbol for an if-then is an arrow. Okay, so if P then Q would be written like this. P, arrow, Q. In other words, P leads to Q. If P then Q can also be stated as P implies Q. It's kind of understood that if P happens, then Q will happen. Okay? So P represents you can eat your dinner, you eat your dinner, and Q represents you can have dessert. PQ is translated to if you eat your dinner, then you can have your dessert. I'm just going to shorten it to you get dessert. Okay? Now, we're switching up a little bit from earlier classes. We used to call the P the hypothesis. We're going to call it the antecedent. And Q, instead of being the conclusion, is going to be called the consequent. Okay? Ante means before, all right? So antecedent happens before, the consequent or the consequence, kind of sounds like, happens after. So let's look at a situation. Your teacher, let's say it's me, says to you, if you do your homework, then I will pass you. So this is your antecedent, and this is your consequent. Now there's 4 different possibilities that could happen here. You did your homework, okay, and you passed. So in this case, then the original statement's true, because I told you the truth. You did your homework, and you passed. You did your homework, but you failed anyway. So in this case, the original statement was a lie. I lied to you. You did all your work, but I gave you an F anyway. 3, you didn't do any homework. You still passed. Well, the original statement is true because I didn't say anything about consequences of not doing your homework. I just said doing your homework implied passing. I didn't mention not doing your homework, what would happen. You're just, it's understood. You're thinking, oh, I have to do my homework to pass. Again, implied. And you didn't do your homework, and you failed. Well, this is still a true statement because nothing in the original statement said anything about not doing your homework. Okay, so you didn't do anything and you failed. That does not make what I said false because you didn't do the homework, so you failed. So what happens here? We have our usual setup, true, true, false, false, and then we have true, false, okay? So this P then Q means true, then true. Okay, we just talked about that. Ended up being a true statement. You did your homework, but I lied to you, making the first statement false. You didn't do your homework, but you still passed. Again, I didn't say anything about that, so it's true. You did nothing, and you failed. Ends up being true. Okay? So, notice the only time a conditional statement is false is when the antecedent is true, but the consequent is false. So this is the only time you have false. So this is kind of, we can add this to our list of easy absolutes. Okay, so we've talked about before, T, there I go again with my A. T and T is true, only time it's true, and false or false is the only time it's false. So these are our three kind of absolutes. Otherwise, in this case, everything else is false. In this case, everything else is true. And in this case, everything else is true. So these are three to kind of keep track of and remember. Okay? It kind of makes it a little bit easier to remember everything else is the other option. All right. So if you jump out the window, then I will catch you. Okay? So again, we're going to have our true, true, false, false. So this is you jump. This is you jump. This is no jump. And this is no jump. Okay? And then true is I catch you. False is you fell or no catch. Again, true is I catch you. And false again is no catch or you fell. Whatever. Okay? So again, the only situation where this ends up being false is when you have a T then F. Okay? So the actual antecedent and consequent really don't matter. It's always just a system of rules, and this is the only time you get a false statement. T then F. All right, so write a truth table for this situation. We have P, then, if P, then Q or P. So remember, this is an or. Whoops. Now, we're going to go down here below and build our truth table. All right. So we have T, then T. So we have P and Q. So the first one is T, then T or T. All right. So I'm going to scooch this over, give myself some room. Okay. Well, that leads to, remember this, true or true is true. So that's T, then T. That's a true statement. Okay. So then we have, if it's true, then either T or F. Because remember, we're just copying this down now, filling the blank. Well, that again is T, then T, because this is a true statement. As long as you have one T, you got a true statement. Now, we have false. We're doing this one. If false, then false or true. Well, that leads to if false, then true, because again, this is true. And that's true, because remember, we haven't had T, then F yet. And last, false, false. So if false, then false or false. Well, that's false. If false, then false. And again, we don't have T, then F, so this is a true statement. So we were looking here for T, then F, and it didn't occur. Let's try this one. we have not Q or P. If not Q or P, then not P. So let's just fill in the blanks. All right. So we have not Q, so we're looking right here. Not Q is false or true. Then not P, which would be false. Well, false or true, right? So false or true leads to true. Then false, right here, we actually have a false right here. T then F is false. Okay, let's do this one. So not Q is true, or P, which is true, then not P, which is false. Well, true or true means true. If true, then false. This is again a false situation. Now we're plugging in this one. So we have not Q, which ends up being false, again, step by step, or P, which is false, then not P, which is true. False or false is the absolute when we get false. If false, then true. That's okay. We can have that one. That's the you didn't do your homework, but you still passed. And now we got this one, FF. So not Q, which is true, or P, which is false, leads to not P, which is not false, which is true. T or F is true, then true, which leads to true. Again, you're just filling in step by step, baby steps, slow and steady. All right. Given that P is alligators or reptiles, which is a true statement, snakes are mammals, which is a false statement, and flies are insects, which is a true statement. Find the truth value of the statement. Okay? P, which is we know is true. And Q, which is false. If that, then not R. R is true, not true is false. Okay? So remember, we're just taking this and putting it right here. And we just establish it being true. And then we establish it being false, and we establish it being true, and not true would be false. Now we go back to what we know. True and false is a false statement. The only time we get a true statement on and is T and T. If false, then false, that is true. You didn't do your homework, you failed. All right, find the truth value here. So R, flies are insects. That's a true statement. So if R, then P, which is a true statement, and Q, which is a false statement. So we have if true, then true and false is a false statement. And remember, this is one of our absolutes. That's the one time an if then is false. Write a compound statement for if alligators are reptiles, so there's our if, right? And snakes are not mammals. That's all in our if. So this all right here is our antecedent. So if alligators are reptiles, which is P, and snakes are not mammals. Well, the Q statement, remember above, said snakes are mammals. So this is a not Q. Then flies are insects. That was a true statement. R. If it said flies are not insects, we'd put not R. Okay? Now, it doesn't say to do this, but let's do it anyway just for practice. We're going to translate it. So P was a true statement, and not Q, well, Q is a false statement, but not Q is a true statement, then R, which is a true statement. So this leads to T, then T, which is true. So this statement up here is true. All right, D. Last one. Either flies are insects and alligators are reptiles. All right. So either flies are insects, which was R, and alligators are reptiles, that's P, or snakes are mammals, and that was Q. Notice, no if then at all. This is just kind of a review problem. Okay, there's no if then. So that's translated. Okay, now let's evaluate it. So R was a true statement, and there I go again. I'm just leaving it. P is a true statement, or Q, which is a false statement. Well, T and T is true or false, which leads to true. So this statement up here is a true statement, and that's it.